Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babyar, and I'm the Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you are a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, and fully funded Great Commission worker. My guest today is Elle Finn. And she is a very creative person and is involved with all sorts of different graphic arts and good things like that for the kingdom. But that's not actually why I invited you on today, Elle. So first of all, let me say welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
happy to be here.
I'm very glad you're here. The reason I asked you on is because I get to interact with a variety of kingdom workers from different walks of life, different cultures, male, female, ethnic minority, ethnic majority, the whole kit and caboodle. But one of the things I hear every now and then is, hey, it's hard to raise support as a young adult female. Mm-hmm. And then I also hear, hey, it's hard to transition from being a single adult living on support to being married, living on support. And you have actually done that. You've lived in both of those worlds over the last 4 years. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you're here. Tell us a little bit more about your process of raising support, even throw in your age and things like that, because I hear reasons and excuses from all over the world, from all walks of life, why people think they have it hard to raise support. And yet you did raise your support team. I'm not saying it was easy for you, but tell us a little bit, think back 3, 4, 5 years ago when you started getting into being full-time and part-time, because I know you transitioned on. Tell us a little bit about your story. So
I started an internship for the last semester of college, and I was raising a little bit of support for that. After I graduated, I was able to transition into full-time after making the decision to go ahead and raise support to step into that full-time position. And so I graduated, and then a few months later, I started full-time support raising after going to boot camp. And so I actually started dating my husband around the same time I was in that first round of support raising. And then it took about 4.5 months to get to fully funded. And then I just dived into full-time designing for my role. So I was working full-time. That must have been started support raising in October. So October, November, December. So I must have been starting that out January, February-ish
when you transitioned. Okay. Because of season of life, most people that I have the blessing of coming into contact with that are in that season of life, most of the people are not necessarily established career people, right?
Right.
So you must have had a lot of meetings with a lot of young adults, right?
I did, yeah.
How many do you think you had? And I realize this is all 4 years ago. So off the top of your head, I'm curious.
How many appointments did I have?
Probably how many appointments did you have as you raised your support team over that 4 months time?
I had probably an average of 6 appointments a week with some lulls.
Sure.
So I guess you do the math.
Okay. So 6 appointments a week over about 4 months, and you got what was then defined as your full funding, right? Okay. And the reason I zoom in on that, and you're probably aware of this, is, we really advocate people really get a lot of appointments. And we've pointed out on several podcasts, and it comes up in the boot camp, if you're only getting a few appointments a week, it's going to take you forever.
Yeah.
If you get 10 or 15 a week, you're going to be working like crazy, but you'll go faster. But also, that's not the only variable, because there's the other one is, who are the people you're meeting with? People have different means and abilities to give.
Yeah.
And where you were at the time, most of the people that you came into contact with, you asked them for what range of support?
I typically ask them for a range of 100 to 200 if I ask them for a range.
Okay. And yet most of the people you were asking to join your team probably hadn't reached their 25th birthday yet.
Right.
Or even close, right? Yeah. And were a lot of them actually still in college?
There were quite a few.
Okay.
There was about 5 to 10, I think.
Okay. And I'm just digging on these numbers, Ellie, just so you know, that not to put you on the spot so much. I just know that people are kind of wondering what's average. And so we're not being prescriptive here and telling everybody what's exactly going to happen to them in their context. But you can give some numbers from what happened to you.
Yeah.
So let's say, and I know this is generally right, you sat down, you invited a lot of people to be a part of your prayer and financial support team. A lot of people had to say no. Several people said yes. If we took off the top, 25% biggest givers that said, yeah, I'll sign up for $200 or $300 or $400 a month. But we also took off the lower 25%, the people that could only do $5 or $10 a month or maybe $20 a month. What do you think was your median? So 50%, what do you think was the median answer of yes once they actually moved forward to stepping on your team?
As far as how much they were giving?
Yeah, like on a monthly basis or, averaged out, divided by 12 over a year, however that worked out.
It was about 50.
About 50 a month.
Yeah,
okay.
50 a month.
All right. And just so you know, we're finding that that number is trending up, but that is kind of the bottom baseline in the United States as of the end of 2018. Like that can change. A lot of things can change. But I don't think that's abnormal at all. However, because of your season of life, you weren't married, correct?
Correct.
No kids that you're aware of, correct?
No.
Okay. Student loans? Did you have student loans?
Yes.
Okay. How much? I'm curious if you don't mind sharing.
$25,000.
Okay. All right. So you had some monthly student loans to pay on. Rent, I'm assuming you're renting, you didn't own. Okay. So,
Correct.
but you were able to raise enough to pay your rent and buy food. I'm assuming you ate daily.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
It was awesome.
It was awesome. Okay. So how long did you live, as a single adult female, full-time in ministry? And of course, I know you transitioned, you were part-time for a while, but how long did that go on before, you met Mr. Wright? Like, we'll get to him in just a second,
Okay.
But what was that period like?
I was full-time single till January 2017. So that was a year about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a year of being single and just full-time ministry and being fully funded.
Okay.
And it was awesome.
Okay. So Ellie, obviously you got married. You and Levi have been married for about 2 years now. Is that right?
Almost,
Time of this recording? Okay. You and I didn't pre-rehearse this, yet you did share just a little bit that you kind of ran into some things that didn't go so well, at least when it comes to your support once you got married. And, in some ways, you're totally like a success story. You're someone who raised their full support and you're moving along. And then you got married and then all of a sudden you began to have some support problems. So tell us a little bit about that and give it a little bit more of a narrative if you'd like.
Okay. So I got engaged. We got engaged in summer of 2016 and we were planning a wedding for January. And during that time, I was still keeping up with my supporters. I let them know, hey, this is my fiance. This is the news that's going on with my life. I'm doing all this ministry and I'm also planning a wedding. So pray for that, please. And pray for provision and things to come into place, all of that. And then we got married and I told them, I sent out a newsletter to my supporters maybe a few weeks later after we got back from our honeymoon and all that. And it was awesome. And a lot of people were excited. I got some fun congratulations from my donors. But that month, within a month or two of getting married, like I think like 5 people dropped off immediately from my sport team. And then over the course of the next few months, more and more people continued to drop off to the point where it was almost half of my support team that was gone.
Okay, so let me just kind of frame that. You let people know you were getting married. Mm-hmm. And these are people that aren't your support team. I'm assuming there was a lot of like verbal conversations and stuff, but also it was like a newsletter thing. But you didn't necessarily connect some dots for people that you were planning to continue to need to raise and live off support because you were going to continue in your missions job. And so pretty quickly over 3, 4, 5 months time, you lost a significant portion of your support once you said, I do. Would that be correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did communicate, hey, I'm still doing this ministry. I so appreciate your support in every newsletter. Thank you for supporting me, giving them a link to join my team. But I didn't explicitly say, hey, I'm getting married and, or I'm getting married, but I'm also staying in the ministry.
Okay. Okay. So would it be accurate to say that, and this is not an attack on you at all, but there wasn't a real good, really clear communication regarding what their role was with you on your team moving forward? There might have been some assumptions rather than clear communication. Oh,
sure. I think, yeah, there were probably some assumptions that happened because of unclear communication.
Okay. Okay. Now, looking at that a little bit more, had anybody told you? Like, had anybody warned you? Had anybody said, hey, heads up, it's great that you're getting married, but if you don't, like, coach up your support team, you're going to lose your support team, or at least some of them. Did anybody kind of warn you that that could happen?
No. I never had a thought that that could happen.
Okay. So there might be some assumptions here on your part, but maybe even had some conversations. But I just want to reiterate, you were continuing to work in the ministry to which you've been called. And that was very much necessary that there was prayer and financial support going on with that. But all of a sudden that all started dropping off once you got married. Did people send in like little notes that said, hey, congratulations, and we're not giving anymore? Or is it just like, hey, congratulations, and all of a sudden their check stopped clearing or they stopped showing up or like, was there any communication? Did anybody say, hey, we're not supporting you anymore because you're married? Or what was that gray area like there during that time?
I had a couple people drop off without communicating anything.
Okay.
But most of the people that dropped off were really, they were kind and gracious, and they were like, we so appreciate what you're doing and have appreciated supporting you, but we're moving on. We're moving on. We're going to support another ministry. No one ever said, we're not supporting you because you're married now and you have a husband.
But the timing of it couldn't be missed.
It seems like and there were definitely some situations that maybe I assumed that it was because I got married, but it totally wasn't. It was for
could have been
other reasons, but but the timing of most of them dropping off right after I got married was pretty telling.
Okay. So you've continued in ministry for a while yet, and yet that had to be just really discouraging.
It was pretty discouraging.
How have you processed that? And I apologize if that's a little too personal, perhaps, but okay. I know this has happened to others, and I've also heard of others that have navigated through this differently and actually been able to even increase their support once they got married. But it's a different season in support raising when you go from being single to married. It's not just it's all going to be okay. It takes some work. So how did you feel during that time? And then what did you do to kind of combat that, if you will?
Well, I hadn't fully acknowledged at the time that maybe that would have been the main reason. I think some of the people that dropped off, I was kind of thinking, oh, that might be why. There might be some misconceptions there. But, in my journey of support raising as a single person, I had a lot of challenges. I think everyone does. And I think I just realized, okay, this is just, if I'm going to do what I feel like God is calling me to do in this role, in this season of my life, challenges like that don't really compare. And I know that, that could be the reason that they're dropping off, or there could be another reason. But it doesn't really matter. I think just because I'm a sinful person asking for other sinful people to support me in my role in doing this kingdom work.
So you have a grand perspective on it's okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be all right.
Yeah.
But looking back, if 2 years later you could talk to 2 years ago you, what's a strategy that you would tell that person as they prepared to get married? Because there's probably some people who'll be listening to this that they're like, oh, this might be me.
Yeah.
There could be a single guy out there that he's met Mrs. Right and they're going to be getting married soon and she might have a full-time job. And he's like, yeah, but I'm still supposed to be doing what I'm doing. What would you tell those people that are preparing for a significant life change like that when it comes to communication with their current support team?
I would say, even though wedding planning is really crazy, prioritize time to over communicate to the people that maybe don't fully understand your situation, that you're continuing in your ministry and you may even need more funds because of this new life change. And I don't know, maybe share more stories of why you're so committed to your ministry still. So and
your partnership with them in it.
Right. Yeah. So, and I would also just tell my old self, myself 2 years ago, maybe to, if I was just more prepared for that blow, it would have been really nice. Even if it still happened the way it did, if I was more prepared and ready to kind of get back into support raising mode with Levi, after that happened, just kind of realizing that those things can happen, that would have helped.
Yeah. There's some wise words in there that I think are applicable for people that might be in or soon be in that season of life. But also I think you're speaking to organizations, and we're not throwing your organization. We've even left the name of it out, but we're not throwing your organization under the bus. But it really sounds like you would have been blessed to have had someone come alongside you and go, hey, heads up here. You're entering into transition times. You need to be prepared. So you could have used a coach or a wise word or somebody to help you navigate that portion of the life change as well.
Yeah. And I think I was at the time the only person in my situation in the headquarters, at least of my organization. So I hadn't really talked to anyone who had experienced the same thing. And that would have been really helpful.
Okay. If you're enjoying these podcasts and they're hitting on topics that you love, consider following Support Raising Solutions on social media for everyday biblical and practical support raising advice as you're in the process of raising your support. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/supportraisingsolutions and on Twitter at supportraising. So, Ellie, I know that you needed to raise some more support then after you got married. A, you lost some, and B, I know some of your expenses went up anyway. So, and I believe your husband was still a full-time student, right?
He was, and he brought in some debt into the marriage as well.
You were the sugar mama.
A little bit.
Okay, so what did you do then to recover? Because I know that this is a success story, but man, you had some work to do. So what happened to kind of recover some lost as well as some new needed support?
So my husband Levi and I decided to do some traveling. He was able to take a little bit off work because he was a student, but he was also working an internship at the time. And So we actually decided to visit some donors that I had already reached out to in the past for some annual support. And we reached out to some of his family members. So it was kind of a paradigm shift because I now had a husband to help me in this process. He wasn't there for every appointment. He wasn't able to make everyone, but he did get to come to a lot of the initial appointments that I had to kind of regain that support, which was
probably in your first few months of marriage, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it was really good for our marriage. We were learning how to do that together.
Seriously, I'm just gonna throw this in there. I think that learning to raise support together as a couple is like this really affordable type of like marriage counseling, or it will cause you to go to marriage counseling.
Or that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you have to learn to let each other speak and who says what. And there's a lot of verbal and nonverbal communication things. So you got to do that in your first few months of marriage. On one hand, that's like terrifying and awesome all at the same time.
It was awesome. He didn't work at the ministry that I've been at, obviously. So he had really only picked up on the information that I had shared with these people, but he was picking up on all of the things that I was doing well and all the information that I was sharing that seemed to be essential to share. And he was also giving me really good feedback after appointments, to the point where he would actually chime in after several once he kind of learned the presentation. And he helped me in that confidence factor a little bit. And it was super helpful when we had to reach out to his family members that he was there. Yeah. There were times that I had to meet his family members by myself when he couldn't make it.
But that was exciting for you.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So that was kind of like, I've never met these people before and they barely know my husband anyway. So it was really just talking to strangers. But
so how much, by the way, did you guys raise? So once you were married, you had to go back and fix some other loss and add some new needs. Was it another like 1,000, 2,000? How much more did you guys need? Do you recall?
Oh, it was probably about 1,000.
Okay.
I know we didn't raise as much as we had hoped in that spurt of support raising.
Right. But you had a full focus for a time that made a big difference.
Right. It did.
Good. All right. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, you're a delight to work with. I've been able to work with you just a little bit. And I know that you are respected among your peers and you're good at your job. And so I'm thankful for how God has led you into ministry. And I'm thankful that you can be an example to others that, hey, you know what? Single females can raise their full funding. Not saying it's not work, but it's completely possible. And let's not believe the lie that it's impossible. And thank you for sharing a little bit about your journey, both through that and even in kind of what you learned, what not to do as you get married, because I think we can learn from you on both regards. So, Elle Finn, you're a joy. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisedsolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcasts from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.